Everything like that is. Oh, I know.
So where is a lot of you displaced here?
Oh, she'll find the spot. I'm just gonna sit right here in the corner.
Okay, you want
They
to
put baby in the corner.
I'll give one my
There's
guy.
my hat. Oh, hey, Alana, the spot where Max was at was found.
I'll move back to my
Do you need, we need space? Oh, this is, no.
because there's left of that. More handouts.
Oh, yeah, we'll get it.
Just keep on that.
Oh, yes. And it's like, you know, microphone for my
That camera has a microphone. Nice to meet you. Okay, don't give up on my.
This is one page.
Hey, you too. Thank you for the. I got your card.
So I guess that's your. Okay, so I'm going to talk today about the life of Saint Dominic, and that's a talk that in various ways I've given it several times over the course of years. I'm going to try to hit things a little bit differently this time. For one thing, I'm going to try to keep it short. And I have over the years really used two principal sources, and one of them is the book by Henry Lacordaire, and you can reach it on the Dominican Idaho website. And the handout kind of shows you which links you go to resources, then you go to library, and find the life of St. Dominic.
I was thankful to Mark Rose.
It's sort of a rather, it's quite beautiful prose. For this talk, I pretty much relied on the second source, St. Dominic by Sister Mary Jean Dorsey, and it's somewhat drier, but good summary, very good summary, and also easy read. And you can buy it, so I have it and binding. And I kind of like to read books, and that's what I kind of what I relied on. And I began this time. I was beginning with the prophets, and one of the things that struck me right away as I started reading the prefaces, it kind of reminds me about what John said about St. Paul's letter to the Romans. If you want to find out a good summation of a book, you say, what did they say at the very beginning, and then what did they say again at the very end? And very early in the book of Romans, St. Paul talks about obedience and faith. And at the very end of it, he talks about obedience and faith. And, wow, well, that's probably a good idea about what this letter is all about. So the same thing happened with Mary Jean Dorsey's St. Dominic. You open up the very first line of the preface. On a hot August night in 1221, a saint whom the church has designated as a holy athlete of Christ finished his course and gave up his soul. So the holy athlete of Christ, and then towards the very end of the book. She also refers to him again as the holy athlete of Christ. He was a giant in the church, an athlete of Christ, capable of doing tremendous things. Even among religious founders, a talented, saintly, and capable group of people, it is doubtful if anyone has ever accomplished so much in so short a time. So this is, I guess, what we might think of it as her primary theme is athlete of Christ. that's sort of the bookends of the book. And she also referred to him once in the main text. And so I'm going to think a little bit about this principle. And you know, I had a friend who walked the Camino, and you hear about people who walk the Camino. And one of the things they say, well, the thing you really got to be watch out for is make sure you have good shoes, right? Because walking all that distance is going to mess up your feet, and it's going to make it so you really start hobbling along. And then if you're really determined, you'll continue along in spite of the hobbling. So in a typical year, I mean, he wasn't doing this all the time, but this is kind of what the life of St. Dominic. One year, while he's in Rome, this is towards the end of his life, he decides to go back home. So he walked up the Italian peninsula, and I don't know if he goes through the Alps, but the first one was going through the Alps, maybe he goes across Riviera, I don't know. And then across Spain, it was across France, visited Toulouse, where he's got a priory there, and crosses the Pyrenees to come down to Segovia, Madrid, in the center of Spain. And then turns around and walks back again. But this time he does a little bit of a detour and goes up to Paris, and then comes back. And he does this in the course of a year, so I don't know how a couple thousand miles, I don't know. But as I said, if you're going to walk the Camino, use the right shoes. What kind of shoes did he wear? None whatsoever. Right, he walked barefoot. So just give you an idea about the athlete of Christ. Walking barefoot across the entirety of Europe and back again. So you probably want to look at the right roads, right, if you're going to be walking barefoot. And there's one famous story about when a heretic who's sort of trying to hide his heretical nature leads Dominic and his companions through France to meet people, and intentionally takes him through a road that's filled with brambles and thorns. It just rips his feet out entirely. And St. Dominic is just grateful for having had this penitential opportunity to walk through the thorns. So, I don't know that I'm going to walk through thorns to go through the Camino. My wife is sick with food and such. I'd like to do that. It just gives an idea that he's a tough guy. There's very little evidence of him ever getting ill. There is a reference to an illness he experienced on the way back here. He got sick in Bergamo, which is somewhere in the foothills of the Alps in Italy. Where he got a fever, passed away, and then he died at the age of 51. He had been running a fever for several weeks. Quite likely, if they lived at a time when there was antibiotics, he would have lived longer. He didn't have that, but he was a tough cookie, right? He ate with discretion. He ate boiled eggs. So he was not, since he was remaining strong, he was not anorexic, but he certainly didn't gorge himself away. I was so I would think of him as an athlete. One of the very currently popular images we hear about in in Dorsey's book, and particularly in Lacordaire's book, there's a good one reason for avoiding the warrior imagery is that in post-Reformation Europe, they started associating him with being a cruel and a warrior, the Inquisition, right? Which didn't even exist in his lifetime, and began, and he wasn't even originally. He eventually became Dominican officer.
But also
And the fights against the Albigenses. Yes, yes. And both Lacordaire and Dorsey are very clearly to say, yes, there was a crusade. No, Dominic was not a warrior. He was a priest, a traveling preacher during the time of the crusade. So, it's necessary to get away from the warrior image because of the abuse that it was given in post-Reformation Europe, which continues to this day, not necessarily so much from the Protestant world as from the secularist world, where I remember seeing just, that was probably 10, 15 years ago on the television. It was Rick Steves. It's Rick Steves' Europe when he was going to southern France, and he talked about these poor Albigensian people of southern France and how they were stomped upon and brutally treated by the Catholics at that time.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Rick. Yeah, so both Lacordaire and Dorsey, what are you talking about? It has nothing to do with St. Dominic. That's one reason to keep away from the warrior. Another is that warriors are always involved in combat, and just I'm making this up my own now. Whereas an athlete, in particular, I think if you're involved in golf or maybe track and field, right? What you're doing is concentrating on excellence or combat, right? I golfed a 65 today, or I high jumped 7 feet and 10 inches, right? It's got nothing to do with whether I won the meet. It has to do with I did my best. I achieved excellence. And that's something that an athlete in particular strives for.
it keeps going through my mind, St. Paul saying, run the race to win.
Yes, right, yes. Run the race well. Run the race well. Right.
Because
I mean, Paul does both. Paul does both warrior and athlete imagery. I mean, he uses both of them quite a bit. Yeah.
Oddly, that when he speaks of that, he's talking about yourself.
Yes.
That matches when, even though you don't win, you did your best.
Yeah.
So it matches up.
he did, actually, he says, run to win so as to win, because many compete, but only one wins. That's
All right. So now I'm going to kind of try to zip through the actual life story. Dominic was born in Calaruega, which is up here, kind of northern Spain, and it's 1170. It's not far from what was the boundary between I'll go ahead and say free Spain versus Moorish occupied Spain, and up until until shortly before his birth. By the time of the life of Saint Vincent Ferrer, Valencia was already free Spain, because the Reconquista had progressed that far. But it's a very long, slow process. And of course, today our secularist world was trying to say, "Oh, the Moors were such benevolent foreign occupiers." And so, yeah, this is his birthplace. He was schooled by his uncle in Palencia, and later went to seminary and became a priest and canon, and he worked in the cathedral in the city of Burgos de Osma, which is all these things are right in this area. And that's where he lived until he was here go on a mission to find a wife for the Prince of Castile. And they were going to the march, which maybe is not really sure where. And so, because he was an excellent canon, the bishop took him with him, and they went, and on their way, they're crossing the Pyrenees, on their way they ran into, they encountered the Albigensian heresy, which is named that little city. And on their way, and then proceeded on. We don't know exactly where they ended up. Did they go to Denmark, or was the march someplace in northern France? That's sort of lost to history. The prince, the king said, yeah, we'll do that marriage, but unfortunately the princess died, and they sort of not possible. On their way back, the bishop, Dominic de Guzmán, the Pope, said, we'd like to go convert the Cubans, wild folks from who come in from the eastern Europe and cross the Trump like you want a mission. This no. You're the bishop. You got to go back to your diocese. And so they started returning back. And as they go through France, they encounter the papal mission trying to convert back the Albigensians of southern France. And they say, what it is you're doing wrong here is you're traveling with lots of finery to you that makes you feel like, therefore, clearly I'm the official representative because I've got my horse, my actually wardrobe, therefore you should listen to me. They're not going to listen to that. They'll listen to you if you are actually willing to embrace the spirituality. That's hard for people to listen to. Say, maybe you guys should lead up our effort. And there's a part of the reason why this is why the bishop and Dominic were is because they'd seen how the Albigensians had managed to get their little hooks on the people in southern France. Is that their leaders appeared to be people of asceticism who lived a very simple life. Now, they had an absolutely twisted theology, kind of like the Manichaeism of the time of St. Augustine. And they might have sounded Christian, but there was lots of ferment going on at the time. There was the Waldensians that really aren't Christians, but these guys, at least as far out there as Jehovah's Witness, maybe they're way out there. But with their appearance of asceticism, they seem like somebody who's going to be a hero for the common folks. Are tired of being talked down to by dukes and bishops and all sorts of people and finery. So Dominic and his bishop Acevedo joined this effort and are approved. This work approved for them by Louis III. And so they began working in southern France. And it's in here that the first in 1206, the very first convent is founded by Dominic of young women who have been rescued from the heretics. And what are we going to do? We'll find a convent, and they begin to live a communal life, and they also do some teaching. And so from 1205 to 1215, Dominic is living in southern France. And he's working on sort of reconverting the people here point in time, his bishop has to go back to visit his diocese, does so, and dies. So that Dominic is left sort of alone in this apostolate. Things get rough when the papal delegate is assassinated and by a man who's working for the Count of Toulouse, and as a result of this, Pope organizes a crusade, the Albigensian Crusade, to sort of remove Raymond from his position as Duke of Toulouse because he was turning the whole place into heresy. And this war begins around 1209. But during this time, Dominic is continuing to go and travel around preaching, convincing people of the truth. He's also, some point in this time, is when he develops the rosary, which there's not an awful lot of contemporary description of when exactly he begins to use the rosary. He also develops, brings together a small group of followers who work with him, walk with him in this preaching ministry, and he has been, as it says in the canon. As a canon means he's living according to the rule of St. Augustine, and that's the sort of rule that he has his companions, a small group of companions living by. Meanwhile, the war continues. In 1213, there's a major battle in the city of Ray, south. And the Albigensian Crusader Simon de Montfort with a army of 800 or something successfully defends the city with, I guess, an army of many thousands. That's been buttressed by the King of Aragon, who's also Catholic. He's a Catholic, but he happens to be the cousin of the Count of Toulouse. So, all right, I'll bail you out again. You jerk, you got me from this awesome. Thousands of guys. And then within a battle which, for which they prayed, hey, Lord, things aren't looking like great. There's just 800 of us here. Stand by us and protect us. And they won the battle. Within a couple of years, the war was over. And there was sort of the end of the ascendancy of Albigensianism. The heresy spun along for a few decades more. But between 1213 and 1215, Dominic's life begins to settle down. He moves back with his companions to the city of Toulouse, where there's a bishop and there's some townsmen who have a place to live, sort of their own parish. In 1215, he goes to the Lateran Council, I guess the Lateran is a hill of Rome, and talks about his idea of setting up an order of preachers, and he and Francis of Assisi at that point in time both meet Innocent III, and it's quite an interesting development because everyone is saying, there's too many of these orders and too many of these preachers, we gotta just stop it, not let it just go on. But when Innocent III meets Dominic, I'm gonna support you guys. But what he tells Dominic is, go back to your people and select an existing rule by which you will live in your order. Don't create a new one. Create one that already exists, because otherwise we can't move. So Dominic towns, unlike the abbeys of earlier Middle Ages that are out in the countryside someplace, and essentially you're all, everybody's got this pastoral life, and maybe you're making wine or you're doing something, working the land. We, the Dominicans, or the Franciscans, we're going to go to the towns, which are now starting to grow, because there's been sort of economic growth causing population growth, and lots of people living in the towns, and they are not properly ministered to by the church. Nobody bothered to preach them. The bishop said, let's go out there to the monastery out in the ruins, and that's a great place. Folks in the town needed this ministry. So, once they decided, yep, everybody's agreed, we're going to live by the rule of St. Augustine, and then to which we're going to add certain of our own little principles. Dominic's to go back to meet with Innocent III, but Innocent III died. And he goes and meets the new Pope, Honorius III. Perhaps a little bit of trepidation, however, Honorius III approves. And December 1216, the order of preachers is approved by the Pope. And it's kind of interesting that we didn't immediately give them the term order of preachers. So there's several versions of the document written by Honorius III. It finds that Dominic and his brothers, the preachers, which is actually kind of revolutionary, because up until then, gotta stop all these crazy preachers running around, getting people confused. Now, Honorius understands this guy is not going to confuse you. He's going to teach you the truth. Yeah. Order of Penance, you're talking about the third order. Yeah, third order. And she talks about it. She had a whole chapter about the third order, but the history behind it, it's kind of a little bit convoluted, so we don't know exactly that much about the very beginnings of stuff. So he comes back, and by foot in August of 1217, he said, "Okay, we're approved. Everybody goes out in twos to different ministries." And so he sends a couple people to Spain and to Portugal. Leaves a couple in Toulouse, a couple in Puy at the convent. Sends a whole bunch of them up to Paris, which is a magnificent place. And he goes with the guy. And they send some over to Bologna, and he comes along. Shucks, I don't think I want to spend too much time talking about his life in Rome, just because I thought interest of the time, except that it's an interesting fact is he's well received in Italy. Are there problems in Italy? Yeah, there are all kinds of problems. He has to take over a convent where the sisters are all used to really relaxed life. And nobody seems to be able to talk to them. Try to take control of those sisters, and he brings them over to the convent of St. Sixtus, and eventually they all sort of snap to. Among them is one of the earliest sources of biographical data about him is Cecilia Session. Met him, she was 17 years old, and then when she was in her 80s, she was recalling exactly what Dominic was like. Which gives you an idea of the sort of impression he made. And 60 years later, she was giving very accurate information about him. And Sister Percy talks about how they did sort of reconstruction of what his face must look like, the base of the skull. Oh yeah, Sister Cecilia, she was talking about. She might have been old, but she still remembered accurately. So yes, he found becomes, he works in Rome, the order grows. He was in Rome, he prays over the dead nephew of a cardinal, and the dead nephew snaps back to life. Some of the people who saw that said, oh, we're going to join the order. And that was the beginning of sort of Northern European Dominicanism, because there was two Poles, a Czech, and a German, you know. They joined the order because, well, they were impressed by the resuscitation of the dead nephew, and they said, the bishop, one of the two of them are nephews of the bishop. They said, could you send Dominicans up to Cardiff? He said, well, not really, but what we could do is make these guys Dominicans, we'll send them up. They said, yeah, sign me up. Very interesting thing. People are trying to sign up. And she goes on many things, like people who have been deans at the university. They meet the Dominican preachers, you know. So what do these guys got? Nothing. You know, we live in a cell. We have a little cell. We don't really have a door. It's just an opening, and there's kind of a bed. That's all. That's what we have. Oh, sign me up. I want to live. I want to live. What exactly? You know, there's some magnetism to not just the man, but to the way of life that is attracting people. And so it's during this time that this trip back to Spain and back again occurs. It's also during this time that the first two general chapters of the order were called in Bologna, and Dominic attends both of them. And the order is growing the whole time. The first time he said, you know, you guys should probably replace me now. I think I'm not really of use to you anymore. First time I read that, I said, you know, this is sort of the self-effacing quality of a saint, which is kind of exaggerates things. And I read it today, and this time around, I said, no, this is what he's talking about is, you guys get dependent on people. It's time for you to go ahead and do this on your own. Kind of like 40 days after the resurrection, what does Jesus do? He ascends into heaven. Well, if I don't ascend into heaven, what's not going to happen? The Holy Spirit and the other one comes. Oh, I want the Holy Spirit. We still don't know. But we can say this much, you know. In order for all these, that first generation of Dominicans to rise to their potential, they maybe need to stop just looking to Master Dominic all the time. So he continued walking around and traveling. He got sick, and he died in August of 1221, and was buried in Bologna. They wanted to give him a nice burial. He said, no, I want to be with my brethren, and they buried him underneath the floor in the refectory or something, so people could walk by. And then 12 years later or so, they decided to give him a new burial and pick him up, translate the bones about that point in time. So, and the last thing I say about this is we'll return to the notion of the athlete, that his athleticism was not just a physical athleticism, it's sort of spiritual athleticism. He was a man of prayer, constant prayer. He was a man of constant charity. They say about him that no one ever had a conversation with Dominic who didn't walk away feeling better because of it. So that his charity shone through wherever, even if what he had to do was say, shape up, Buster.
are you looking at me?
What are you looking at me for? But see, most of us can't do that. Most of us can't walk up to them and say, "Shut up," and have them go away feeling better. You know, that's how we normally would react to this. But so he was able to reprimand people in such a way that they would walk away feeling better. Okay, so this is our spiritual athleticism that we do such a thing. And he said, I'm going to be more of use to you now. And that was probably true as well, because they're advocating that. And one last thing I'd like to say about it is it's kind of interesting how he was well received in Italy, but very badly received in France. That is, he made some companions, but he worked there for a long time. He was here from 1205 to 1215, and certain people, there was the nuns, there were the companions who eventually became the first 15 members of the order. But it was a lot of hard work with very paltry results for a long time. And then you kind of went the world and became an overnight superstar. It's not because maybe he's to continue to make spiritual advancement. I think it has to do a lot with, ugliness is in the eye of the beholder. The people of southern France have been somewhat brainwashed by the Albigensians and decided that they really can't stand up. Well, why can't you stand up? Well, he preaches well. Okay. He's cheerful. He's not ostentatious and wealthy. He lives a simplistic life like we do. Okay, so and that's something for us to think about. We are reacting to someone with animosity. Where is the source of that animosity? Clearly, that we went to Italy, and we're still meeting people who are sinners. Sinners were all over the world, but they were sort of willing to hear. And I guess that's something for us to consider as well. What do we need to do to be able to hear when the athlete of Christ comes to talk